The woman at table 9 snapped her fingers at me like I was a dog. I was carrying 3 plates of eggs and hash browns, balancing a coffee pot in the crook of my elbow, and she snapped her fingers because her mimosa wasn't cold enough. "Excuse me," she said without looking up from her phone, "this tastes like warm juice. Can you fix it, or do I need to speak to someone who actually works here?" I set the plates down at table 7, smiled at the old couple who thanked me, and walked back to her. "I'll get you a fresh one," I said. She finally glanced at me, then did that thing where her eyes traveled from my sneakers to my ponytail and back down again, like she was scanning a clearance rack. "You know what, never mind. Just bring the check. I don't even know why I came to this place." Her friend across the table gave me an apologetic look but said nothing. I brought the check. She paid with a black card, left no tip, and on her way out, she knocked over the little vase of plastic daisies on the counter without stopping. I picked them up, put them back, and wiped the water with my apron. Then I went into the walk-in cooler, pressed my back against the cold metal shelving, and just stood there for a minute, breathing. That was a Tuesday in February. I remember because my son had a dentist appointment that afternoon and I still hadn't figured out how to pay for it. My name is Clara. I was 31 that winter, living in a rented duplex on the east side of Billings, Montana, with my 2 kids and a furnace that groaned like it was dying every time the temperature dropped below 20. Noah was 8. Sophie was 4. They were the only reason I got up most mornings, and honestly, some mornings even that wasn't enough. I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling and bargain with myself. 5 more minutes, just 5. Then I'd hear Sophie calling for cereal or Noah asking where his other sock was, and I'd drag myself vertical and start the day. I'd been waitressing at Patty's Griddle since the previous September. Before that, I worked the front desk at a physical therapy clinic downtown. The pay was decent, the hours were steady, and my boss was a quiet woman named Dr. Henley, who never raised her voice. I liked it there. I had a little desk near the window and a coffee mug with a chip on the rim that nobody else wanted, so it became mine. I kept a photo of the kids taped to my monitor. It felt almost normal. Then the clinic lost its lease. The building sold to a developer who wanted to turn it into luxury condos, and just like that, we were all out. Dr. Henley cried when she told us. She handed each of us a card with a handwritten note inside and 2 weeks of severance. I thanked her, drove home, sat in the driveway for 20 minutes, and then went inside and made mac and cheese like nothing had happened. The waitressing job came 2 weeks later. Patty herself hired me. She was a stout woman with a voice like gravel and a laugh that could shake the walls. "You ever carried 3 plates at once?" she asked during the interview. "I've carried 2 kids, a diaper bag, and a bag of groceries up 3 flights of stairs," I said. She hired me on the spot. The pay was less than the clinic. A lot less. Tips helped, but not always, and not enough. I learned quickly that some people tipped generously and some people didn't tip at all, and there was no way to predict which was which. The woman who ordered the most expensive thing on the menu might leave $2. The old man who nursed a single cup of coffee for an hour might leave 10. I stopped guessing and just worked. Mornings, I opened the restaurant. Afternoons, I picked up the kids. Evenings, I did laundry, homework, dishes, bedtime. Nights, I sat at the kitchen table and stared at numbers that never added up. Rent, electric, water, car insurance, gas, groceries, Noah's inhaler refill, Sophie's daycare. Every month was a puzzle with missing pieces, and every month I jammed them together anyway, cutting something here, stretching something there. I stopped buying coffee. I stopped buying new clothes. I cut my own hair in the bathroom with kitchen scissors and told myself it looked fine. I ate whatever the kids didn't finish. Some nights that was half a grilled cheese, some nights it was nothing. Noah noticed. He was sharp like that, always watching, always quiet. One evening, he came into the kitchen while I was rinsing dishes and said, "Mom, why don't you eat dinner with us anymore?" "I do," I said. "You don't," he said. "You just move food around your plate." I looked at him. He had his father's dark eyes but none of his father's cruelty, and that was the thing that broke me every time. I crouched down and hugged him. I'm fine, baby, I promise. I wasn't fine. His father, Marcus, left when Sophie was 6 months old. There was no dramatic fight, no screaming match, no plate-throwing scene. He just came home one Thursday, set his keys on the counter, and said he was moving to Denver with a woman he'd met online. He said it the same way you'd say you were switching phone plans. I asked him about the kids. He said he'd send money when he could. He never did. Not once. I filed for child support. He ignored the court orders. Eventually, he changed his number and disappeared into whatever life he'd chosen, one that apparently didn't include the two small humans he'd helped create. I didn't miss him. I missed the idea of him, the idea of someone else in the house, another adult to split the weight with. But Marcus himself? No. He was a man who could watch his baby daughter cry for an hour and not get up from the couch. Good riddance. Still, being alone with two kids in a town where winter lasted 6 months was its own kind of war. It was a Saturday morning in March when I met the old woman. I'd stopped at the Safeway on my way home from a double shift. I was exhausted, the kind of tired that lives behind your eyes and makes everything look slightly blurred. I grabbed milk, bread, peanut butter, bananas, the basics. Sophie needed pull-ups, Noah needed notebook paper for school. I did the math in my head as I walked each aisle, rounding up, subtracting, checking against what I knew was in my account. At the checkout, the woman in front of me was small and thin, bundled in a green wool coat that looked older than me. She had white hair tucked under a knit cap and hands that shook as she placed her items on the belt. A can of soup. A box of crackers. A single orange. The cashier scanned them. "That's $5.12, she said. The old woman opened her coin purse, counted slowly, and then stopped. Her face fell. She looked at the cashier with an expression I recognized instantly, the quiet math of shame. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I think I'm a little short." I reached past her and tapped my card on the reader before the cashier could respond. "It's taken care of," I said. The old woman turned to me. Her eyes were dark brown, almost black, and very still. She studied my face for a long moment. Then she said something that stopped me cold. "You carry too much, sweetheart. But the load is about to shift. Don't let go when it does." I blinked. "I'm sorry?" She picked up her bag with both hands and nodded once. "You heard me," she said. And then she walked away, slow and steady, out through the automatic doors and into the gray parking lot. I stood there, holding my groceries, heart beating hard for no reason I could name. Just a strange old lady, I told myself. That's all. But her words followed me home. They followed me into sleep. They followed me for weeks. Spring came late that year. By April, the snow had mostly melted, but the cold hung on, stubborn and sharp. I picked up extra shifts at the restaurant. Patty noticed I looked tired and slipped me a 20 from the register one afternoon. "Don't argue," she said. "Buy yourself something that isn't ramen." I almost cried in front of her, but held it together until I got to the car. Around that time, a man started coming into the restaurant every Wednesday and Friday. He always sat at the counter, ordered black coffee and a turkey club, read the local paper, and left a $5 tip on a $9 meal. He had sandy hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and a flannel jacket that looked like it had been washed 1,000 times. His name was Ryan, and he worked at the lumber supply warehouse on Route 3. He was polite in a way that didn't feel rehearsed. He said please and thank you and good morning like he meant each one. He asked about the specials even though he always ordered the same thing. And once, when Sophie came in after daycare because my sitter canceled, he made a paper airplane out of his napkin and sailed it across the counter to her. She laughed so hard she got the hiccups. I didn't want to like him. I didn't trust it. The last man I'd let into my life had walked out like we were a rental he'd decided not to keep, but Ryan kept showing up. Not aggressively, not romantically, just consistently. He asked my name, he remembered it. He asked about the kids. He remembered their names too. One Friday he stayed until closing. I was wiping down tables and he was finishing his coffee. "Can I be honest with you?" he said. I paused, rag in hand. That depends. I think you're remarkable, he said. And I'd like to take you to dinner sometime. Somewhere you don't have to clear the plates afterward. I almost said no. The word was right there on my lips, loaded and ready. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the way he looked at me, not past me, not through me, but at me. Okay, I said. One dinner. That one dinner became 2, then 5, then a summer of evenings on his porch watching the sun drop behind the rimrocks while the kids caught fireflies in the yard. He was gentle with Noah and patient with Sophie and never once made me feel like I owed him anything for it. We got married in October at the courthouse. Noah wore a clip-on tie. Sophie threw flower petals from a paper bag. Ryan's mother drove in from Great Falls and cried the entire ceremony. It was small and imperfect and exactly right. For almost a year, things were good. Ryan moved into the duplex. He fixed the furnace. He built Sophie a bookshelf shaped like a castle. He taught Noah how to change a tire and how to scramble eggs. I started eating dinner at the table again, with all of them, like a family. Then the warehouse cut hours. Then they cut positions. Ryan came home one evening with a box of his things from his desk and a look on his face I hadn't seen before. Hollow. Defeated. He sat on the edge of the bed and said, "I'm sorry, Clara. I promised I'd take care of things, and now I can't even do that." I sat next to him. "We'll figure it out," I said. "We always do." But we didn't. Not easily. Ryan started looking for work, but Billings was tight that winter. He applied everywhere. Hardware stores, gas stations, the meatpacking plant, an hour south. Nothing came through. He started staying up late, staring at his phone, scrolling through job boards until 2 in the morning. Then he started sleeping past noon. Then he stopped looking altogether. I came home one afternoon and found him on the couch, curtains drawn, TV off, just sitting in the dark. The kids were at school, the house smelled stale. "Ryan," I said. He didn't look up. I sat across from him. "Talk to me." "What's the point?" he said. "I'm useless. You were better off before me." That word, useless, it scared me more than anger would have. Anger I could handle, I'd lived with anger. But this quiet surrender, this slow dissolving, it was something else. I called his doctor the next morning. Ryan was diagnosed with severe depression. He started medication, started therapy, started trying. Some weeks were better. Some were worse. I held things together the way I always had, with duct tape and stubbornness, but I could feel the seams pulling. Then Noah started getting headaches. At first they were occasional. A dull pain behind his eyes after school, gone by bedtime. I gave him water and told him to rest. Then they got worse. He'd come home squinting, holding his temples, lying down in a dark room for hours. His teacher called to say he'd been putting his head on his desk during math. The school nurse said he needed his eyes checked. I took him to the optometrist, his vision was fine. I took him to the pediatrician. She ordered blood work. The blood work came back abnormal. She referred us to a specialist in Bozeman, 2 hours away. The specialist ran more tests. Scans. Imaging. He sat us down in a small beige room with a box of tissues on the table and said words I couldn't process. Tumor. Optic pathway. Inoperable in its current position. Needs immediate treatment. I remember the fluorescent light buzzing above us. I remember Noah squeezing my hand. I remember the specialist's mouth moving, but the sound cutting out, like someone had pressed mute on the world. On the drive home, Noah was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Mom, am I going to die?" "No," I said. "No, you are not." I didn't know if that was true. But I said it like a vow. Noah was admitted to the Children's Hospital in Billings in early December. They started treatment immediately, aggressive rounds that left him thin and gray and so tired he could barely open his eyes. He threw up almost every meal. His hair fell out in clumps. Sophie didn't understand why her brother couldn't come home, and every night she asked, "Is Noah still sick?" Every night, I said, "He's getting better." I lied. He wasn't getting better. The treatment wasn't working the way they'd hoped. His doctor, a woman named Dr. Reyes, with steady hands and careful eyes, pulled me aside one evening in the hallway. "The scans aren't showing the improvement we expected," she said. "We're going to adjust the protocol, but I want to be transparent with you. If the next round doesn't show significant change, our options become very limited." "What does that mean?" I asked, even though I already knew. "It means we should start having conversations about comfort measures," she said quietly, "about quality of life." I walked back into Noah's room, sat in the chair beside his bed, and held his hand while he slept. His fingers were thin, his breathing was shallow. The machines beeped in a rhythm that sounded like counting down. I didn't sleep that night. Or the next. Ryan tried. He drove to the hospital every day after his therapy sessions, brought Sophie, read Noah stories, sat with me in the cafeteria, and held my hand across the table. He was trying so hard to be present even through his own fog, and I loved him for it, even when I didn't have the energy to say so. But the bills. The medical bills were a tsunami. Even with insurance, the copays and deductibles and out-of-network charges piled up like snow on a rooftop. I picked up every extra shift Patty could give me. I drove for a rideshare company on weekends. I sold the couch, the bookshelf Ryan had built, my grandmother's ring. I sold everything that wasn't nailed down and still came up short. One night, after the kids were asleep, I sat on the bathroom floor and cried until my chest hurt. Not the quiet kind of crying. The kind that comes from somewhere deep and old, the kind that sounds like an animal in a trap. I pressed my face into a towel so no one would hear. The second round of treatment ended in late January. Dr. Reyes called me into her office. She didn't sit behind her desk. She sat next to me, which told me everything before she spoke. "Clara," she said. "I'm sorry. The scans show no meaningful improvement. At this point, we've exhausted what we can offer here." I stared at the wall behind her. There was a painting of a mountain. A stupid, generic painting of a mountain. "What are you telling me?" I whispered. "I'm telling you it might be time to bring Noah home," she said. "To let him be comfortable. To be together as a family." I walked out of her office. I walked down the hallway. I walked past the nurse's station, past the vending machines, past the family waiting room with its stale magazines and donated toys. I walked until I reached a stairwell, and then I sat on the cold concrete steps and stared at nothing. My son was 8 years old. He liked dinosaurs and maple syrup and building things out of cardboard boxes. He wanted to be an astronaut. He'd never been on an airplane. He still believed in Santa Claus because I'd never had the heart to tell him otherwise. And they were telling me to take him home to die. I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough for the light through the window to change. When I finally went back to his room, Noah was awake. He looked at me with those dark, serious eyes and said, "Mom, you've been crying." "No, I haven't," I said. "Your nose is red," he said. "It always gets red when you cry." I sat on the edge of his bed and brushed my hand over his bare head where his hair used to be thick and wild. "I'm just tired, baby." He reached up and touched my cheek. "It's okay, Mom," he said. "I'm not scared. I know you're going to fix it. You always fix everything." I bit down on the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted blood. That evening, a nurse named Jackie knocked on the door. She was young, red-haired, and had been especially kind to Noah since he was admitted, sneaking him popsicles and drawing cartoons on his whiteboard. "Miss Mercer," she said, "there's a woman downstairs at reception asking for you. She says she knows you." Said something about crackers and an orange. My whole body went still. I walked downstairs. And there she was. Same green coat. Same knit cap. Same dark, steady eyes. She looked exactly the same as the day I'd seen her at the grocery store, maybe smaller, maybe more fragile, but with the same unyielding clarity in her gaze. "You came," I said. I don't know why that was the first thing out of my mouth. I didn't even know her name. She tilted her head. "Of course I came. I told you the load would shift. It's time now, take me to your boy." I didn't question it, I didn't have anything left to lose. I brought her upstairs, past the nurse's station, into Noah's room. Jackie raised an eyebrow. She's family, I said. An aunt. From out of town. The old woman set down a canvas tote bag on the side table. From it, she pulled a folded linen cloth, a shallow ceramic bowl, and a glass jar filled with clear liquid. She moved slowly but with purpose, like someone who had done this many times before. She looked at Noah. He looked at her. Neither of them spoke. Then she dipped the cloth into the liquid, wrung it gently, and placed it across his forehead. Noah closed his eyes. His breathing changed. Deeper, slower, calmer than I'd heard in weeks. She moved the cloth to his chest, held it there. After a minute, she lifted it and squeezed the liquid into the bowl. It ran cloudy, gray, like dirty dishwater. I stared. "What is that?" I breathed. She didn't answer. Just refilled the cloth and continued. She came back every day. Morning and evening, without fail. She never gave me her name. She never explained what she was doing. She just arrived, did her work, and left. The nurses learned to let her pass. "Doctor." Reyes observed once from the doorway and said nothing. On the second day, the liquid ran lighter. On the third day, Noah asked for scrambled eggs. On the fourth day, he sat up in bed and asked me to bring his sketchbook. He drew a picture of a rocket. On the fifth day, he walked to the bathroom by himself. Jackie cried when she saw him standing. On the sixth day, Dr. Reyes ordered new scans. She came back an hour later, looking like someone who'd seen something she couldn't explain. She stood in the doorway, chart in hand, mouth slightly open. "Clara," she said. "The scans are clean." "What do you mean, clean?" I said. "I mean the mass has reduced to almost nothing." "I don't understand it." "I've called in the radiologist to double-check, but the imaging is clear. Whatever is happening, it's working." I turned to look at the old woman. She was rinsing her cloth in the sink, her back to us, humming something quiet and tuneless. On the seventh morning, she came one last time. She placed the cloth on Noah's forehead, held it, then lifted it into the bowl. The water that dripped down was perfectly clear. Not a trace of gray. She nodded once. "That's done," she said. "He's going to be just fine." I couldn't speak, my throat had closed up. I grabbed her hand, this small, trembling hand with paper-thin skin, and held it to my face. "Who are you?" I whispered. She smiled. Not the polite kind, the knowing kind. Same smile as the grocery store. "I'm just someone who knows what it's like to carry more than you should," she said. "You bought me crackers when I was hungry." "That's not small, sweetheart, that's everything." She picked up her bag, touched Noah's cheek once with the back of her hand, and walked out of the room. She didn't look back. I ran to the hallway a minute later, but she was gone. I asked at the reception desk. Nobody had seen her leave. I checked the parking lot, the lobby, the chapel on the first floor, nothing. Like she'd never been there at all. Noah came home on February 14th. Valentine's Day. He walked out of the hospital doors on his own 2 feet, wearing a puffy coat Ryan had brought and a beanie Sophie had picked out, bright red with a pom-pom on top. Sophie ran to him and hugged his legs so hard he almost fell over. Dr. Reyes stood at the entrance and watched us go. She caught my eye and shook her head slowly, not in confusion, but in something closer to wonder. That first week home, I didn't do anything. I didn't work. I didn't clean. I didn't worry about bills or shifts or the furnace. I just existed in the same space as my children and let that be enough. I made pancakes. I watched movies on the couch with all 3 kids piled on me like puppies. I let Sophie paint my nails a terrible shade of green. I listened to Noah talk about the solar system for 45 minutes without interrupting. Ryan sat with me on the porch one evening after the kids were asleep. The sky was clear, full of stars the way it only gets in Montana winter. He put his arm around me, and I leaned into him, and we didn't say anything for a long time. Then he said, "You saved him, Clara." "No," I said. "I bought an old woman some crackers." He looked at me like I was speaking another language. I didn't try to explain. In early March, Patty called. She was expanding. She'd found a second location across town, near the university, and she needed someone to run it. Someone she trusted. "I want you," she said. "Full manager. Salary, benefits, the whole thing, you've earned it 10 times over." I said yes, before she finished the sentence. On the day the new restaurant opened, I wore a blue dress I'd bought from the thrift store and a pair of earrings Sophie had made from beads and pipe cleaners. Noah drew me a card that said, "Good luck, Mom. You're the best boss in the world." He'd spelled world wrong, but it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever read. That night, after the dinner rush, after the last customer left and the chairs were stacked and the kitchen was clean, I stood alone in the empty restaurant and looked around. My restaurant. Well, Patty's restaurant, but mine to run. Mine to build. I caught my reflection in the dark window. The woman looking back at me was tired, sure. She had circles under her eyes and a stain on her sleeve and hair that still needed a proper cut. But she was standing. She was standing and she was whole, and her son was alive, and her daughter was laughing somewhere, and her husband was trying, and her furnace was fixed, and there was food in the fridge, and a paycheck coming on Friday. I thought about the old woman. I still didn't know her name. I never saw her again. I asked around town, described her to neighbors, showed up at the Safeway on Saturdays hoping she'd appear in the checkout line. She never did. But I think about her every single day. I think about what she said in the grocery store and what she did in that hospital room and how a $5 can of soup and a box of crackers somehow tilted the entire axis of my life. I don't understand it. I probably never will. A week after Noah came home, I was driving past the Safeway and I saw a man standing near the entrance. He was thin, unshaved, holding a cardboard sign that said "Anything helps." I pulled over. I didn't have cash, but I went inside and bought him soup, crackers, an orange, and a pair of gloves. I put them in a bag and handed them to him. He looked at me with red, tired eyes. "Thank you," he said. "You didn't have to." "I know," I said. And I walked away before he could see me cry. Some nights, after the kids are asleep and Ryan is reading in bed and the house is quiet except for the furnace humming like a lullaby, I step outside onto the porch. The cold Montana air hits my face and I look up at the sky, at all those impossible stars, and I whisper the same thing every time. "Thank you, wherever you are, thank you." And sometimes, I swear, the wind whispers back.